What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Streckbein, coming to you live one more time from the sunny state of Florida. We're diving into Pittsburgh Steelers maybe being done, maybe starting to hit a crossroads with Aaron Rodgers and Ben Roethlisberger, sparking a conversation that I think is very much so needed at this point in the entire saga. Make sure to subscribe to us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, you can find all of my work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. One more day here in good old Fort Lauderdale. And I'm not going to lie, as beautiful as this is, okay, as wonderful as my time has been in Florida, I'm excited to get back to a studio, to sit there and to really hunker down on this show and Aaron Rodgers watch week 5 and everything else that comes with the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. But for right now, we're talking Ben Roethlisberger, what he means, and have the Pittsburgh Steelers hit a point where maybe, just maybe, they are looking for alternatives for Aaron Rodgers, looking for, okay, we're not totally sold he's coming. We don't know if we will ever be sold that he's coming. And because of that, we have to look for other options. Let's dive into it first with good old Ben Roethlisberger's words, and then we'll go from there. He said on his podcast, Footballin' with Ben Roethlisberger, quote, "Aaron, let's be honest." And I have to take a second here for a second. I have to take a moment here for a second to say, I very much so appreciate him directing this directly to Aaron Rodgers, because many people will say, calling him out or whatever. I look at it as two guys who have spent a lot of time in the NFL, who are future Hall of Famers in this league, and who have solidified themselves as two of the best in the same generation. They have spent time playing against each other, competing for championships against each other. Ben Roethlisberger has the credentials to say, has the resume to say, Aaron, I could speak to you directly because, well, I've done a lot of the things you've done, and we could sit here and say, okay, let's listen. Aaron, let's be honest. If you're going to throw to DK Metcalf and telling everybody about it, you may as well just sign. Like, what are we doing? And I'll take another second there and say, throwing with DK Metcalf, just to break this thing down piece by piece, I mean, I mentioned that the other day, is utterly wild to me that Aaron Rodgers emerged from the darkness to throw with DK Metcalf and make it public. Whether he was the one that made it public or not, they had a professional photographer there. There is no way that he was sitting around going, okay, these are just going to go on a wall in DK's living room, that this is for his personal collection. No, this was going online. This was going on social media. And you could put it on the wildest, smallest social media platform of all time. It's still hitting the public. And it's going to blow up. And it's going to be all over ESPN. It's going to be all over the Pat McAfee show. It's going to be all over us, you guys, everywhere. Everybody is going to be talking about Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf throwing a football together. Everybody in the midst of Aaron Rodgers watch. So anybody sitting around thinking, oh, he didn't know it wasn't his photographer. I don't care whose photographer it was. The second that a professional photographer showed up, everybody knew what was happening, including Aaron Rodgers. And the fact that he just let that happen, I mean, there are a lot of questions about, is this about attention? Is Aaron Rodgers looking at this and really contemplating Minnesota? No, it seems like Aaron Rodgers is really just being as dramatic as humanly possible. And at this point, it's becoming known to pretty much everybody how dramatic it is. He continues by saying, quote, "I really believe that he is going to be a Steeler." I'm saying it. I really believe that he's going to be a Steeler. However, the reason, in my opinion, that he hasn't signed yet, I think Aaron is still holding out for Minnesota. I got two trains of thought here. The first one is about Aaron Rodgers and what I believe he's holding out for, and whether or not I think Minnesota is a real option for him at this point. The second one is about Ben Roethlisberger and his words, and the fact that he, amongst many others, have hit a point where Aaron Rodgers clearly is not a Pittsburgh Steelers style player, that he's just maybe a little bit too dramatic. And people, even Ben Roethlisberger, who was dramatic in his day, are realizing that this is just too far. This is just too much. We'll start with Minnesota. It's a big question. It's a looming question. Is Aaron Rodgers holding out for the Minnesota Vikings, or is he contemplating retirement? I have zero belief that Aaron Rodgers is sitting around still thinking about leaving the NFL. That at any point, Aaron Rodgers believes that he is not going to play football in 2025. I think that road is gone. He has crossed that bridge. He is in the I'm playing this season. The only way he'd retire is if this thing got so dramatic and the Pittsburgh Steelers said, we're done, we're out, which I'm not going to say is out of the realm of possibilities. I'm not going to say is likely, but I'm not going to say is out of the realm of possibilities. When it comes to Minnesota, I also don't think he's holding out hope for Minnesota. I truly don't believe that. I do not think that Aaron Rodgers, who has spoken with Minnesota multiple times, who has stayed in communication with Kevin O'Connell and that entire staff, is sitting around going, these guys are going to be a team that eventually offers me a contract. That's just not going to, you'd have to wait until August. And don't get me wrong, Aaron Rodgers would wait until August, but that's my point here. My point is, this is nothing to do with Minnesota. This is nothing to do with retirement. Aaron Rodgers understands exactly what's going on. And I've even heard conspiracy theories that Aaron Rodgers has to convince himself that he wants to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's why he's going on visits. That's why all of this is happening. I truly believe this is Aaron Rodgers just simply being Aaron Rodgers and looking for the attention that comes with being Aaron Rodgers. That he is loving every moment of this, and that he's dragging this out and trying to make this deep and sympathetic and hey, this is about me and my future and my really, really deep thoughts and contemplation about where we are and what's going on. And instead, this is simply just Aaron Rodgers sitting around looking for the attention that Aaron Rodgers is warranting at this point in this offseason. And I truly believe Ben Roethlisberger, other former Steelers, I've spoken to other former Steelers, are hitting a point where they're just sitting around going, nah, this isn't a Steeler. This isn't a Steeler way. This is too dramatic. This is taking up too much time. This is all of the bad things that you don't want to be part of a quarterback decision are becoming true. And that's where Aaron Rodgers is. Now, the bigger question is, how long are they willing to wait? And are they already hinting at alternatives? And I think yesterday, when Joe Milton was presented as a trade to the Dallas Cowboys, and many knew and understood that the Steelers were involved and wanted to find out what and where they and when they offered a contract or a deal, to New England for Joe Milton and what that was. I think it gave us a behind the curtain look at the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers are, one, looking for options. I went through that yesterday. I think the Steelers are looking for options. But I also look at it and think the Pittsburgh Steelers might be looking for alternatives. And we might be coming upon a time when the Steelers are ready to find those alternatives because they understand that they're running out of time. You looked at it early in this process, and that was not the case. You understood that Aaron Rodgers was the best option and that chances were he's going to land in Pittsburgh, but it's okay to wait because you have Mason Rudolph. Okay, that's awesome. But if the Steelers are thinking about Carson Wentz, if the Steelers are thinking about Joe Flacco, if the Steelers are thinking about Hendon Hooker, if the Steelers are thinking about any other option on the table, they are likely hitting a point where they are saying the train is rolling. Deals are getting done. Russell Wilson is signing with the Giants. Joe Milton's getting traded to the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe, just maybe, things are going to start heating up. Maybe Carson Wentz is the next name off the board. Maybe Joe Flacco's the next name off the board. Maybe another trade with Hendon Hooker because the Detroit Lions have Kyle Allen is the next move. And the Steelers understand that right now they are not sold that they are going to get Aaron Rodgers. They at no point have ever been sold that they're going to get Aaron Rodgers. That's the wildest part of this whole thing is they're confident that they are the best landing spot, but we're all confident that they are the best landing spot. The difference is that they are by no means sold or certain that he's going to sign. The conspiracy theories of a handshake deal between Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers are just not true. That's there's no part of that. Instead, I truly think the Steelers are sitting around having conversations, Omar, Mike Tomlin, Art Rooney, sending messages to Aaron Rodgers through words like Art Rooney saying, we're not willing to wait forever. And then having conversations of when are other options going to be off the board? When are we going to hit a point where we're in trouble because we've waited too long for Aaron Rodgers? I think that crossroads is coming sooner than we believe. I'm not saying they're bailing on Aaron Rodgers. They're not going to. And if he announces it at the big night out with Pat McAfee, I think it's the most ridiculous thing you could possibly do. And to be honest with you, anybody who's upset about him dragging this out and being this dramatic so that he can make that announcement there, everything's warranted. Everything's warranted. But just a big giant but, actually. You got to look at it and say it's possibility, and the Steelers have to protect themselves. And I think they're starting to realize that. I think they're starting to have those conversations. Again, it doesn't mean that they're going to pull the trigger on anybody, but they tried to on Joe Milton. Who knows if they're going to try to again? I just look at it and say, we're hitting that point. We're hitting that. The wheel is spinning for the first time in a long time when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, and potentially going a different direction. That's what I gained from this. That's what I gained from yesterday. That's what I gained from Big Ben's words. That's what I've gained from Art Rooney's words. It just feels like those who are around the Pittsburgh Steelers or who have developed a Pittsburgh Steelers mindset are starting to hit a breaking point going, look it, we will bend, but at a certain point, we're about to break. And the Steelers are there. Aaron Rodgers could do this with, I don't know, maybe the Giants or the Jets, excuse me. They could have potentially done this with the Giants, but even the Giants moved on. Even the Giants said, we're done. The Steelers are right now a desperate team, but how desperate are you willing to get? And I truly don't think it's as desperate as we think we are. I don't think it's as desperate as everybody is concerned that they're going to be. I really, really believe that the Steelers at some point are going to start having those conversations, made it very clear to us at the league meetings that they are not willing to wait and that they are thinking about alternatives. They are thinking about other veterans. Omar Khan said it and said you could pretty much bet that another veteran will be on the team. Joe Milton got that train rolling. Do the Steelers jump on it next? That's a big question. I think it comes before the draft. I think that we get an answer before the draft. I don't think the Steelers go into the NFL draft with just one veteran. I mean, Skylar Thompson, but just one veteran in Mason Rudolph. I truly believe that they go a different option. And they say, okay, Carson Wentz, Joe Flacco, who I think are lower on the list, Hendon Hooker, maybe. As crazy as this sounds, I know nobody wants to hear it. Will Levis, like any name that is realistic for the Steelers. I think before the draft, they have that in place. That's where I sit here and stay. Because it doesn't matter about showing up on April 21st and trying to develop chemistry with your guys. That doesn't mean half the team isn't there anyways. Aaron's not showing up. He's not spending April and May in Pittsburgh when it's still rainy. That's not what's going to happen here. Instead, what we're looking at is the Steelers saying, okay, the draft is in a week or in 3 days or whatever. We have to move on. We have to go a different direction. Aaron's not worth waiting around for. And that's the risk that you're taking, because the Steelers look at this and say Aaron Rodgers can win us a Super Bowl. But if Aaron Rodgers comes in here and stinks, how bad do you look? You look awful. And 31 other teams, coaches lose jobs. GMs lose jobs for situations like this. In Pittsburgh, that's not the case, but it doesn't mean Art Rooney's not pissed. It doesn't mean Mr. Rooney's not sitting around going, this is unbelievable. I can't believe we found ourselves in this situation. That is still, nobody's going to get fired, but that is still very much so how they would handle that. Is they would look at it and not be okay. Nobody'd be okay. I truly think that that's starting to become a possibility, that the Steelers understand how desperate they look, that Art Rooney's not happy about it, that they are starting to look at alternatives. It doesn't mean they're going to pull the trigger on an alternative. They're not. But every day this moves on, especially if the big night out comes and it doesn't happen then, we get closer to the Steelers reaching that crossroads of saying, it's over. We can't do this anymore. We can't wait for Aaron Rodgers because we don't know if Aaron Rodgers is ever going to come. And we look worse, and we're running a bigger risk by the day, because you go 10-7 with Mason Rudolph, which is realistic, and you go 10-7 with Aaron Rodgers, which is realistic. The only difference is there's some respect with Mason Rudolph, and there's a lot of complaining and a lot of underachieving and a lot of upset fans with Aaron Rodgers, and it's all warranted. It's all warranted. If the Steelers wait this long for Aaron Rodgers, every week the Steelers wait longer for Aaron Rodgers, the expectations for what he should do this season should raise. That's how everybody should look at this. Is if the Steelers have to wait until after the draft for Aaron Rodgers, they should be AFC North champions and some. You wait until training camp, potential Super Bowl champions. That's where they go. And is that the case? No, not realistically. But that's what Aaron Rodgers is saying. That's what the Steelers are saying, is that we're waiting around for a quarterback who's going to win us a Super Bowl. 3 weeks ago, it's a quarterback who could win us a Super Bowl. Today, it's a quarterback who is going to take us to an AFC North championship, who's going to win a playoff game. The longer this goes out, those expectations raise. I think everybody's aware of that. I think the Steelers are aware of that. And again, it's not realistic. Nobody's sitting around going, Aaron Rodgers is the savior of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nobody believes that. But that's what this wait is saying. This wait is making a statement that the Pittsburgh Steelers are all in on Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, well, the longer you wait, those expectations should raise. And the fans should be the one raising those They should be putting that standard higher on the team. Hey, Mike T, Omar Khan, Art Rooney, you guys want to wait this long for a quarterback that I don't believe is going to win more than 10 games? All right, cool. Well, he better take us to an AFC championship game, because you guys were willing to wait as if he was the second coming of Christ and was going to win us an AFC champion or an AFC championship game. That's what the Steelers are saying, because you could go win 10 games with Mason Rudolph. I truly believe that. You could go win 10 games with Carson Wentz, maybe. Joe Flacco, maybe. I mean, this is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They win 9 games no matter what. But you could go have a playoff shot season without Aaron Rodgers. The longer they wait, everybody should be increasing those expectations and putting it on them, even if they don't believe that they're there. Just to say, hey, you guys deserve more pressure because of how you handled this situation. That's how I view the Steelers situation. They have a long-term plan, but their short-term one, wild. Absolutely wild. And I think they're starting to look at alternatives. We'll dive into it more. All right. With that said, we're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to dive into all of your questions, because I've gone on my Aaron Rodgers rant. It's been fun. I've done it too many times this offseason. I know that there's other topics everybody wants to talk about. We're going to dive into them here in a second. First, quick word from our boys over at Penalty Verdict.
What's up, Steelers Nation? I'm here to tell you about our new partner, Penalty Verdict. You ever watch college or NFL games and think, that call wasn't right? Yeah, we all do. Now you can vote on it. With the Penalty Verdict app, you can vote on NFL and college football penalties in real time. Use the app to share your thoughts and engage in a community with fans who are looking for fair and accountable play. Unlock the next dimension of sports by engaging with real-time polling on referees, players, and teams. Then, view data-driven insight to have informed discussions about the game. Penalty Verdict is in the developmental phase and would love to hear feedback from you. What features do you want to see in the app next football season? Vote on NFL and college football penalty calls in real time with Penalty Verdict. Use our link.penaltyverdict.com/allsteelerstalk to get started today.
Shout out our boys over at Penalty Verdict. All right, we're going to start diving into all of your questions, so I appreciate everybody who's tossing them in the chat. Shout out to our members. Shout out to our super chatters. Appreciate all you guys. Let's get it started with our boy Dominic. Joined always by the man in the corner, my sleep paralysis demon. Noah, have you looked into Nick Nash's tape? Sleeper wide receiver, would love to help with any and all draft info in the future. Love the program. Appreciate you as always. Don't know much about Nick Nash. We'll do a little Google search of Nick Nash as we're chilling here right now. Oh, out of San Jose State. Oh, actually, I do know about Nick Nash. I don't know much about his tape. I haven't dug into what he is capable of, but he is a mid-round sleeper. I was actually talking to Nick Fairbaugh at the league meetings about some like mid to late round guys who the Steelers could target, and his name did come up. I think he's got a lot of versatility. He's obviously got the size as a jump ball dude and another athletic, I don't want to say smaller, like normal sized wide receiver. It seems like if you're 6'2", 6'3", like there's just like, oh, you're just a wide receiver. I do appreciate his ability to just kind of do it all. Like he's got decent speed. He's got decent hands for sure. He could go make contact or catches at the point of contact. I think Nick Nash has potential in the NFL. Coming from a small school, it's always dangerous to dive into those guys and start to label them like big giant superstars in the NFL, because I mean, I think Christian Watson was like the last prime example of everybody saying this dude is going to be ridiculous. And like, yeah, he's good, but I don't think he's the superstar many thought he was going to be because he comes from a small school. I do like Nick Nash. I do like his tape, but I haven't dug into it enough to say that he's a bona fide guy who deserves to be drafted in this round, and this round, and this round. I will, though, and I appreciate you bringing him to the surface for me, because I look at Nick Nash as a name that is amongst those mid to late round options for the Steelers. And I think that's where they're looking right now. You know, there are a lot of people that ask, is Emeka Egbuka off the board? Is Matthew Golden the guy because the Steelers brought him in for a draft visit yesterday? Possibly. Definitely possibly. I think Matthew Golden is more of a realistic option right now than Emeka Egbuka, because the Steelers are interested in keeping George Pickens as we sit here right now. Matthew Golden is a later first-round pick. I think you could trade back if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers and still land a Matthew Golden. And I think that's where they're headed. But I think those 4th, 5th, 6th round guys are where the Steelers are looking and have the most interest right now because of their outlook on George Pickens and their outlook on Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin to say, okay, we need somebody, we need depth. We need another piece that could develop into something bigger, but we're not going to make a massive splashy investment in that guy. Again, Matthew Golden sits higher on my list right now as a possibility than Emeka Egbuka. But a mid-round guy like Nick Nash definitely adds his name to the list, and I will look deeper into his tape to make sure that I get you a better answer. Shout out Chase Dreams. Anyway, we look into Kirk Cousins, maybe rework the contract, move back in the draft, gain extra picks, and go get Grant/Harmon, Milroe, and Damian Martinez in the 4th. I love Damian Martinez. I think he is one of the most underrated running backs in this NFL draft. People say Ollie Gordon. I say Damian Martinez. I think that dude is a stud out of Miami. I think he's really good. I loved at the NFL Combine that Dylan Sampson stood in front of his nameplate, and the first question asked was like, hey, how was it growing up with a Latino mom? And Dylan Sampson's like, I have no idea, to be honest. It was a good moment. I don't think Kirk Cousins is on the table for the Steelers currently. Obviously, he's an option. They're going to look into all options. They're going to keep all options available. but I don't think Kirk Cousins is the ideal candidate for the Steelers. If Aaron Rodgers decides we're done and after the draft the Steelers still need a veteran, could be an option. Could be the guy that, or a guy that the Steelers look into, but it comes with massive money, and you have to somehow convince the Atlanta Falcons that you are going to, or that they should take on almost $100 million of Kirk Cousins' deal and trade him. And if it's after the draft, you're trading him for next year's pick, which isn't ideal. You also want that pick because you're going to go all in on a quarterback next season. So you want as many draft picks as possible. The Kirk Cousins to me thing, the Kirk Cousins thing to me just seems too complicated where we sit here right now to say that it'll work for the Steelers, where if you look at their long-term plans and their short-term plans, it just doesn't seem to add up to where it could work out for Pittsburgh. Now, that being said, moving back in the draft, I think, is becoming more realistic by the day. Get picks for Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon. I think both of them have the possibility to be gone before 21, but I also think both of them have the possibility to be on the board at 21 and to be an option. Jalen Milroe in the third is a great move. If he falls to 83, I don't think he's gonna, but he's a great move. And Damian Martinez in the fourth, I absolutely love. I think he fits so well with what the Steelers are looking to do. I think he adds that perfect speed, but a lot of power behind Jalen Warren and Kenneth Grant that kind of makes a great three for the Steelers. And I think explosiveness is huge. And Trey Henderson and Quinshawn Junkins are incredible. Hard to pass up. Caleb Johnson, who they brought in for a visit yesterday, hard to pass up. But I love Damian Martinez as like that middle round guy. He's my favorite middle round guy where we sit here today, which is less than a month away from the draft. Shout out to our boy Kyle Spackler for gifting one All Steelers Talk membership. Anybody wants to join the All Steelers Talk Nation, do so. Appreciate all you guys as always. And Carl, can't thank you enough, my friend. Keeping a truck in here. Going to make sure that I scroll through all the comments and make sure that I find all the questions. I know defensive tackle is a huge concern, but do you think that there's a chance Dart works out? I think taking a flyer is better than just having a room of Mason and Skylar. There was a reason we didn't re-sign Mason. I agree with that, but I think the viewpoint is too narrow. That's how I look at this, is the viewpoint is too right now, immediate relief where you're better off looking long-term. I just think Jackson Dart next year is a third-round pick in a draft that has a lot of good quarterbacks, and the Steelers kind of look at it the same way. So if that's how you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, we need a short-term option, yeah, Jackson Dart's awesome if you're willing to take a risk on it. But if the Steelers could go back 3 years ago, and redo the Kenny Pickett draft, they would not draft Kenny Pickett. They would go and say, we took a guy who we had to convince ourselves is the best option available because we need a quarterback right now, when if we waited, we wouldn't be in this situation. That's how you have to look at it. And that's what the Steelers are looking at it, saying that they have a team that Jackson Dart doesn't come in here and win you a Super Bowl in 2025. So why not go get a better quarterback next year that you can hope does win you a Super Bowl within 2 years? And in the meantime, have a team, overall team, that is developed way better than one that would include Jackson Dart this year. I just think you're looking too narrow at the situation when, I get it, Jackson Dart might be good. You get much better options next year with much higher potential. And I just think if you look back, the Steelers are trying to learn from their last mistake. And because of that, patience is key. And it's important to hold on to that patience. Shout out Dominic again. Say Mike Tomlin was abducted by aliens. Incredible way to start this comment. Incredible way. What are all the coaches in the NFL? What are all the coaches in the NFL you see as a Pittsburgh Steelers coach? I think Arthur Smith fits a Pittsburgh Steelers coach, which I know nobody wants to hear, but just being honest with you guys. I thought Aaron Glenn was a Pittsburgh Steelers coach. I think Robert Saleh is a Pittsburgh Steelers coach. I think Brian Flores is a Pittsburgh Steelers coach. Who else would be on the table here? you'd have to look at younger guys. Like, I don't think the Steelers would go after a Kellen Moore like the Saints did this year. I don't think they'd try to get that young quarterbacks coach that comes out of nowhere. I don't think they'd go after a Kubiak and try to make him a head coach. That'd be tough. That'd be tough. I think Arthur Smith is the only one in Pittsburgh that they'd consider, which, I don't think I agree with, but I'm just being honest with you guys. And Brian Flores, Robert Saleh are two big ones that I think would work well for the Steelers that they would look at. And I could see them going that way and then trying to continue it with names like Antonio Pierce as a defensive coordinator, like really hardcore dive into defense. But yeah, I think Brian Flores would top that list. Robert Saleh would also be on it. Sack Sage, do you think if we all go into a darkness retreat? Let me tell you guys, let me take a quick moment. Oh, I got to go back here. John Gruden also certainly on that list. This is the first week in a long time I've had to like read every single comment, and I've been telling everybody, I'm like, man, dude, comment sections are brutal. Today's fantastic. Loving you guys. Do you think if we all go into, I should have got me again, all go into a darkness retreat and come out next Thursday, the saga will end, besides this putting eyes on Rodgers and the Steelers? I wish. I think maybe. I've heard rumors that it is going to be at the thing, that the Steelers at least believe that that's a possibility. I honestly, if I was the Pittsburgh Steelers and that's what happened, I'd tell them we're good, dude. We're okay. You don't need to do that. This has already been the most dramatic thing ever. Because to me, it just points out that this is just the beginning of the drama. That's what this all says. All of this says is that the Aaron Rodgers is just getting started with the Steelers, that he hasn't even signed, and they are this invested in the dramatic situation that Aaron Rodgers is bringing to them. When, if he's going to make the announcement there, what comes next? What is brought up on Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays on the Pat McAfee show? Like, what happens? How many players does he call out? How many media members does he call out? How many fans does he call out? Does he get booed on the opening thing and then sound off? Does he walk away mid-season? There are so many questions. I think this is the beginning of a very dramatic relationship between Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. It makes me concerned. Do you think we look into a new long snapper, or is Christian Kuntz good enough for them? Christian Kuntz is the man. He's a good long snapper. They've looked into other long snappers, but Christian Kuntz ain't going anywhere. He signed a 3-year deal this offseason, so they're not getting rid of him. Christian Kuntz is the man, dude. He is my top 5 favorite player in that locker room. I wish he got some love on Hard Knocks because he's hilarious, and he works his butt off. So shout out Christian Kuntz. People are comparing Jackson Dart to Kenny Pickett, but there was so many things that went wrong. Bad OC, bad O-line, and we have addressed the issues where a quarterback could do better than KP8. Thoughts on this take? I think Jackson Dart has a lot of the same similarities as Kenny Pickett, and I'm not going to pull back on that. I hate to say it. I know, Maddie, that you're a big Jackson Dart fan, but I truly am not. I think that he worked in a really easy offense in Ole Miss and processes the field a little bit slow, which is Kenny Pickett's biggest issue. And he's got a decent arm, but he gets rattled. And I don't know. I think Jackson Dart, but again, it goes back to my last argument. If the situation is better, why not get the best option available? If the Steelers are set up for success long-term with an offensive coordinator and a running game and wide receivers and an offensive line, why not go get the best quarterback you could possibly go get? And that's next year compared to this year. I just think that if that's the argument, if it's the system is better, imagine what you could do with a Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy than you would be able to do with a Kenny Pickett. If Kenny was still the Steelers quarterback this season, they would not be viewed as a Super Bowl team. If CJ Stroud was, they would. They would be considered a Super Bowl team. That's the difference. I think next year you gotta understand that it's just significantly better. At this point, it's my belief that Aaron is going to retire. Let's draft someone who can develop with Mason and move on. By the way, you hit up Palm Beach Par 3 yet? Great place. I have not actually, but I have spent a lot of time convincing all of my friends that we are coming down very soon for a golf trip because it's just, it's unbelievable down here. Like I'm excited to be back in Pittsburgh. Okay. I'm finishing up a deck in my backyard that I've been thinking about all week. Just need to put the steps on. Super pumped about it. But this place is wild. This place is wild. I have not, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, I think you draft a quarterback this year that you develop, but I think next year you go all in on a quarterback. I keep saying that. I'm okay with Mason. I think he wins you 9-10 games. I don't think there's any big giant issue there. But I do look at next year's draft as the one. I don't think Mason wins you Super Bowl. I don't think Aaron wins you Super Bowl, but I also think that Aaron Rodgers gives you a clear, better shot at it than Mason Rudolph does. And if that's the outlook, yeah, but I don't think he's going to retire. He might retire, but I don't think that's the case. He loves this too much. You could tell he loves this too much. He'd do this again next year if he really could. Maybe he'd retire and come back like Brett Favre. But he's playing the system, man. He's loving this attention. A-Rod won't show up to OTAs. He wouldn't help a younger quarterback either. He doesn't have the time or patience for that. Basically, he would be unavailable until preseason. Okay, so I'm going to push back on the younger quarterback thing. I have heard by many, including players who played underneath him, that Aaron Rodgers is an incredible mentor, that he's one of the greatest they've ever played with. So you got to push back on that. Like, you could say that Aaron Rodgers is dramatic, is attention seeking, is making all of this way crazier than it needs to be. But he is a good mentor, and he's done good things there. Like, it hasn't always worked out. Zach Wilson isn't a great quarterback, but Jordan Love is. Jordan Love's a good quarterback, and he gives a lot of credit. They're still very close. So I think he would be really good for a young quarterback. I do agree with you that he's not going to show up until training camp, and he's going to have a hard time living in a dorm room in Latrobe and being okay with that. I was shocked Russ was. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is showing up to training camp and saying, oh, yeah, I can't wait to go live in a dorm room at 41 years old. Nah, that's a tough place to show up to after you just spent a summer in Malibu. That is a tough place. No, I honestly appreciate all of you do for us as both AST fans and Steelers fans. I trust the process because I believe we are not as bad as people say we are, just our AFC North football. Look at, I agree. And first off, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I think the Steelers are in a much better spot. They just got to figure out the quarterback position. They are. You look at teams with great quarterbacks who are Super Bowl contenders. There are holes. There are a lot of holes on their roster. But you get a good quarterback and weapons around him and a good coaching staff, it works out a lot of times. So the Steelers are a quarterback away from being a real contender, and you just don't rush the process with quarterback. You wait, you be patient, you go get your quarterback. The Kansas City Chiefs are a prime example of this. They went and they waited and they said, okay, Alex Smith's awesome, but we're going to get Patrick Mahomes next. Okay, great. The Steelers are about to do the same thing. Okay, yeah, great. Mason Rudolph's fine. He's not Alex Smith, obviously. All respect to Alex Smith. Mason Rudolph's fine. Aaron Rodgers is fine. Next year, we're going to get our quarterback. I think you got to be patient with it 100%. Happy Friday, fam. Hey, Noah, do you think that they could be doing this purposely to mess with other teams' draft strategies? I don't, because to be honest, like, it just doesn't impact anybody's draft strategy. They're too late in the draft. You know, like, what if anything, they'd be saying like, oh, you could wait on a Jackson Dart if they signed Aaron Rodgers. But I think the other way around, it just says, hey, add a sense of urgency, go get a quarterback. And if that's their plan to get the Giants and the Raiders and the Jets to go make bad decisions at quarterback, okay, not going to argue against that. But I don't think that it helps them getting a quarterback if that's their plan. Now, if they're dragging this out to do the opposite, okay. But it truly doesn't feel like that. Like, it truly does. And I know that I know what I'm being told. And what I'm being told is that there's no handshake deal. There's no sitting around thinking this is done and they're hiding it from us all. Like they really do not know if Aaron Rodgers is gonna happen. I mean, like I had dinner with Art Rooney and Mike Tomlin and a bunch of other people, and I obviously made a joke with Omar as like, hey, I really thought you were gonna pull Cordero Patterson last year, because last year he signed, I believe he signed, I'm on the conspiracy theory of he signed Cordero Patterson during this like giant NFL party that they throw at the league meetings. And I went up to him and said, hey, you better not have just signed somebody because I'm trying to have a good time. And he said, no business tonight. Next morning, Cordero Patterson gets signed. And I was like, okay, well that, I appreciate you waiting until 9:30 in the morning, but that's what happened. And I made a joke about it this year. And he said, yeah, we're talking, but like, you just don't know. You just don't know. And I think that's where the Steelers stand is things feel okay, but it's tough. It's tough. When do you think Rooney, Khan, and Tomlin each start thinking, let's move on from Rodgers? Who's the last to want to move on? Tomlin's going to be the last that wants to move on. Tomlin is going to be the last that wants to move on. I think Rooney's getting real close. I really do. I think Rooney's getting real close to that breaking point. And I think that Omar Khan is going to be second because he's going to understand that. The way I look at it is Omar's the guy. He's not Kevin Colbert when it comes to scouting, but he's the guy that works the NFL and understands it better than anybody. So it's just like the Darius Slay thing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Tomlin said, hey, go get DJ Reed, go get Byron Murphy or somebody like that. And Omar was like, yeah, a little bit too expensive. And he was like, all right, go get Darius Slay. He's like, oh, I could do that. And with the quarterback, I wouldn't be surprised if Tomlin's like, we're waiting it out. And Omar's like, look at dude, Carson's about to sign. Joe Flacco's about to sign. Hendon Hooker's about to get traded. We're out of options. We got to make a move now. So I think Rooney does it because he's just upset and fed up with it, which I do not disagree with him. I think Omar would be the next because he'd think about it logically and say, okay, we're getting really close. And then I think Mike would hold on desperately until the last second because he's trying to win a Super Bowl, which you can't blame him for. But I think that would be close. I do think that they start reaching the let's move on from Rodgers point just about the draft. Just about the draft. Because at that point, think about how dramatic this whole situation is. Think about how tired we all are. We're exhausted from talking about it now. We hate this. Nobody loves this. And they got to be 3 more weeks from now. Whew, I can only imagine. I think a palm tree just fell next to me. Crazy. Don't know what that is. When is the NFL draft? That is April 25th is when it starts, and then it goes 3 days. April 24th, actually, I believe, and then it goes till the 26th. That'll go through. If we don't get Aaron Rodgers and get someone in the draft and or sign someone, will there be a real quarterback competition with Mason Rudolph? It depends on who they bring in. If they went with a Joe Flacco, I don't think so. I think it would be Mason in pole position and the Joe Flacco would be the backup. If it was Carson Wentz, I do think there'd be real competition. If it was Hendon Hooker, I think there'd be real competition. If it was Will Levis, I think there'd be real competition. I think I'd put Mason over Will Levis. I think I'd give Mason the upper hand over Hendon Hooker. I think Carson Wentz would be a good battle. But I think it would just depend who it is and who they brought in as that guy. That would be real competition. But I do think Mason would hold the upper hand over almost anybody. Noah, what the hell is this scuttle about trading TJ to Washington for a 2nd and 4th? Total BS. Yeah, total BS. There's I mean, unless I missed something in the last, nope, I didn't miss anything. There's no TJ. Look, TJ's not going anywhere. There's no chance TJ's going anywhere. TJ is a one helmet guy. Omar Khan said that 5 times. Rooney said that. It's just not happening. Like, TJ's not going to, he's going to retire a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's going to get paid like $38-39 million a year, and he's going to be totally fine with that situation. Totally fine. Do you think if the Steelers get Rodgers, they draft Milroe to a run package like we did with Justin Fields? I think that's a possibility. I do. I think Jalen Milroe is a guy that they really like, but at the same time, I don't know if they're going to have the opportunity to get Jalen Milroe. I think he's going to go in the second round, and unless they trade back and add a second round pick, I just don't think that's going to be realistic for them. That could change. He could fall. He could rise. I think Jackson Dart starts that whole conversation, because if Jackson Dart goes top 10, Jalen Milroe's going into the first round. If Jackson Dart goes 25th or in the second round, Jalen Milroe's going in the third round. So I think it depends. But if that was the case, yeah, I do think they'd have a running package for him. Unlimited, another one fell over here. Unlimited moonballs. Hey, Noah, shout out to the mullet journey. We're getting there, guys. We are definitely getting there. What moves besides Aaron Rodgers do you think the Steelers will / need to make prior to the draft? I think a swing tackle is the next one I'm making. That's the big one for me, is they don't have a swing tackle. They don't have competition for Broderick Jones. I don't know. I don't know what their plan is there. Maybe it's Spencer Anderson because they've brought in a guard. They have Ryan McCollum who could play guard if need be. But I think they need a swing tackle. I think they really need a swing tackle, to be honest. And they have to go get one. I think there are names out there still. You could look at, guys like Chris Hubbard, who played in Pittsburgh, and say that's a good name. I think DJ Humphries is still on the market. Like, you could draft somebody. I think that's what they're waiting for, is a guy like Gray Zabel, a guy like Jackson Slater, all on the market as like guys the Steelers will have interest in. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're waiting till the draft to see if they can land one of them. They're both great players. And if not, that's the one position that I think the Steelers need to bring in at some point. Like, you can't just go into the season without a swing tackle. This is Pittsburgh. So that's my thing. As far as 2026 quarterbacks, are you familiar with Mark Gronowski? Won an FCS championship, MVP in one of them, and Walter Payton Award winner at South Dakota State, now at Iowa. No, I do not actually. I know this year's South Dakota, maybe North Dakota State guy, the dude out of Canada. But I don't know Gronowski. I will look into him for sure. I got called out on not knowing names yesterday. So you could ask my family. Yesterday I was sitting on my phone just watching quarterback highlights, trying to familiarize myself on how to say everybody's name, but also diving into deeper next year's class, because I think it's super important to know these guys outside of the top 5. So I will add him to my list for sure. How did we even get here? How did our quarterback issue get so bad? Where did it start? Ben Tomlin, etc. I think it started with the Steelers' inability to tell Ben to suck it up after 2019. I think Ben didn't help that situation, but I think that goes both ways. And I think after that, I think they jumped the gun on Kenny. They should have just suffered it out with Mitch for a year. And the next season, they would have had a better opportunity. Like, this is fixed twice. If Ben is comfortable mentoring a quarterback that isn't going to steal his job, and they make it aware that, like, hey, you're here until you don't want to be here, then the Steelers are fine, and they're in a good spot. And they have maybe a Lamar Jackson. They have maybe a Jalen Hurts. It's a way better situation. If they don't jump the gun on Kenny Pickett, which I believe was Art Rooney who made that call, then they get a guy the next year they make a move for a CJ Stroud or somebody like that, and they way better situation than they are right now. So it's solved twice if they practice patience and they change their way about looking at things. But instead, here we are, which is why I think they're learning from the past and not going to make the same mistake again. Stephen Cornfield, everybody's favorite UPS driver. Do you think Tomlin and Khan are now, in hindsight, regretting their quarterback offseason decisions at this point? At steadfast on their current position, or steadfast on their current position, also have a safe drive back later today. Appreciate you. Flying spirit, so we're going to hope for the best. Last time I was here, which was last year, I got trapped in an airport. You guys might know this. I have terrible luck with airports. I got trapped in the Fort Lauderdale airport for 18 hours, something like that, because the Spirit people told me that my flight was delayed, but that they were probably going to get it back on track, so don't leave. And I said, all right, sounds good. So I checked my bag and went in, and I sat there for 18 hours and didn't leave. And they sent me 2 $5 coupons that I couldn't use anywhere. It was awesome. It was awesome. When it comes to their hindsight, they wanted Justin Fields, and it didn't come down to money. It didn't come back down to a bad offer. You want to know what I think that they're regretting? I truly think that they're regretting not keeping Justin Fields as their starter in 2024. That's where this regret would probably come in, is they need to have a quarterback that trusts them and that they trust. They're not going to get that this year. They would have got that if they kept Justin Fields the starter last year. So I think that's where the only regret comes in, is they screwed up with Justin during the season. He left because of it. He didn't leave because of money. He left because of it. And that's where I think hindsight, that's where they're regretting it. No, if you were the general manager, our pick comes at 21 and on the board. Kenneth Grant, Shedeur Sanders, Omarion Hampton, Matthew Golden, and Emeka Egbuka are all there. Who do you take, or do you trade back? I trade back. I trade back at that point. I'm looking at it going, Kenneth Grant and Shedeur Sanders are options that are on the board, and I'd consider it 21. But if they're both there, cool. Omarion Hampton, I don't think is on their list at 21. Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka, I think are, but if they're both there at 21, you can move back. I'd move back. I'd see who came and who was there, and I'd feel confident with it. If you remove one of these names outside of Omarion Hampton, I believe that they take Kenneth Grant, no matter who you remove, unless you remove Kenneth Grant. But if you kept all 5 of them on the board, then I think you move back and you try to get a second round pick in the process. Why are we trying to give Rodgers a home? Why didn't Rodgers go home? That's your home. Are you too good for your home? That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Do you think Arthur Smith can help Mason Rudolph like he did Ryan Tannehill and just forget about Rodgers? I do think Arthur Smith can help a quarterback if he had. Like, I think Arthur Smith helped Justin Fields last year because Justin Fields wanted to be helped. Russ didn't want to be helped. Russ just wanted to play quarterback at 36 years old and say, I know how to do this. That's why it didn't work out in Denver, and that's why it didn't work out in Seattle. That's why it didn't work out in Pittsburgh. So I do think Arthur Smith is a good coach who can help a quarterback. He's done it before. He did it with Justin Fields last year. Justin Fields looked better than he's ever looked in his career at points last season. I think he could do it with Mason. I don't think he's a Super Bowl quarterback, even with Arthur Smith, but I do think that he could help him. All right, just making sure I don't miss nothing because I appreciate you guys. Aaron Rodgers flamed out in New York. Why would you bring the drama to the team? Rooney needs to grow a set and make the decision for him. Take the train. You cannot wait for Rodgers' son's takeover. I don't think Aaron Rodgers flamed out in New York. I think that there were a lot of issues in New York. I'm trying not to put that on him. I do think Art Rooney thought this saga was going to end weeks ago, and it didn't. And now he's kind of stuck in this, and he's not happy about it. He's not thrilled about the situation. But I do think that's where we stand currently with that situation. Our boy Broderick Wallace, can Arthur Smith elevate? Oh, I apologize that I answered and I didn't. My bad, Broderick. Totally missed this one. Look, I'll say yes. Now, this is why. I'm glad that I caught this again because I can give a deeper answer. I think Ryan Tannehill's issue was not talent. It was processing. It was, how do I get an offense to run smoothly without making mistakes or without trying to be a hero? And I think that's where Mason Rudolph's game struggles in the same space. Mason Rudolph was check down king the last time he was in Pittsburgh. And I don't know if that changed. Obviously, he's running on a shorter leash these days, so you're going to make ballsier decisions. I think that's where it comes into play. Is Arthur Smith, it's hard to teach a quarterback to process the field better, but what Arthur Smith did really well with Ryan Tannehill and with Justin Fields is he allowed the options to present themselves accordingly. You know what I mean? And I think that's what you can do with DK Metcalf and George Pickens and Calvin Austin is teach them, hey, on this play, this is who you're looking for first. This is who you're looking for second. I could teach you when to look for these guys. I could teach you when they should be open. I could design an offense where you don't have to cross field to find number 2. You could move your pattern of progression this way instead of this way. And I think that helps a ton. And you saw that a ton in Tennessee. You saw that a ton in Pittsburgh last year with Justin Fields, where guys, I mean, it was hilarious when Russ was out there because he would never find them. But you'd watch the offense run George Pickens deep route, Van Jefferson crossing, Calvin Austin crossing underneath. Essentially, all that's doing is saying, okay, George's route 1, Calvin's route 2, Van's route 3, or vice versa, or whatever. Pat Fryermuth's over here. The only difference is Calvin Austin would be wide open and Russ couldn't see him. Well, Mason Rudolph would be able to see him. I think that's where it helps. Is Arthur Smith's offense is not crazy. It's not a Zach Robinson offense. It's not a Mike McDaniel's offense. It's not a Kyle Shanahan offense. It's a ground and pound offense where when you throw the ball, everything is easy to read. And I think that's where Mason Rudolph needs the most help is his progressions are slow. He's got all the talent in the world. He's got the ability to throw the deep ball, the short ball. He's super accurate. Like Mason Rudolph is that guy. It's just the processing is slower. And I think that's why, or that's where Arthur Smith can help him a ton, to be honest. Why and when did Will Levis enter the chat? And Rodgers chimes in going, we don't need a banana and mayo eating quarterback. Oh, that's disgusting. I agree. And I think he only entered the chat because I find it very hard to believe that he's going to stay in Tennessee this season. And I also find it very interesting that the Steelers pursued Joe Milton. I think that shows you something. I don't know exactly what, but I do think it shows you that they were interested in making some sort of trade. What about bringing back Chooks? I think he's a free agent. He's not. He's in New York with the Jets. I also don't think Chooks would ever want to come back to Pittsburgh. He made it very clear to me and others that he would have never signed an extension if he knew he was going to lose his starting job. He had issues with Matt Canada that boiled over to issues with everybody else. I do think he was a good teammate and people liked him. But Chooks has some issues, man. I mean, he gave up on New England last year and just decided he was done playing. Now he's back in New York. I don't think the Steelers would consider him. I don't, even if he was a free agent. I also think Chooks would have been decent if they developed him properly and moved him to the left side instead of the right. But I think that screwed a lot of things up. He's too athletic to play right tackle. Should have never been on the right side. Should have never had to move over. The Steelers once again made wild situations. Broderick, I'll call myself out on this one. I apologize. That one did not pop up for some reason, but you know, I got news coming next week. Hopefully that solves all that. What do I think the Giants' record is this year? I don't know. I think it's a possibility Russ isn't the starting quarterback by the end of the season. I'll say that. And we'll leave it there. All right. I think we're caught up. And we'll finish it with this one. And then you could go watch you guys are hilarious. Why are we not trusting that Mason can take us to a Super Bowl and beyond? I don't understand. Mason has proven that he can do it. He just lacks mobility. Noah, why are you so down on Mason? I'm not down on Mason. I just think that Mason is not Patrick Mahomes or anybody else in that realm of quarterback. And again, I think it's just processing. That is the issue. I don't think Mason's a guy that processes the field super quickly, and hopefully you could develop with that, you know, but I think when Arthur Smith took Ryan Tannehill to the AFC Championship game, he had one of the best running backs in NFL history and a great defense. And I think the Steelers could have that. I'll say this, if Jaylen Warren rushes for 1,800 yards, the Steelers win the Super Bowl. They do. But if Mason Rudolph's got to throw for 6,000 yards, they don't. And I think that's the difference. All right. We'll finish it off with this one. I think Aaron would be good for us this year, but I really would like to see Mason get a full offseason and regular season. I think the Steelers are starting to come into that light as well. I think the Steelers are coming to the understanding that they like Mason, that they're okay with Mason, that they'd be comfortable with Mason, and they might go from there. I think Aaron is still on the docket, and they are still waiting. But every day that passes, the Steelers are getting closer to saying we're hanging up the phone and this is done. And I don't think it's Mike Tomlin. I think it's a collective of all three of them saying, look at man, this is not okay. We are not happy about this situation. You are debating nothing and you are dragging us along, and this is ridiculous. I think Mason could do well with the full offseason. Again, I think that's the only difference when it comes to Aaron Rodgers is like Aaron Rodgers has done this before. Aaron Rodgers has been in those moments, and that plays a big role. Mason is not. And I don't know what he does with a full season. I agree with you. I think I'd be interested in seeing what he can do. I think if the Steelers accept that Mason could be the guy this year and then go in a different direction at quarterback next year, I like that as well. I don't think he wins the Super Bowl, but I'm not like super Mason sucks. I'm not. No. And I look at it and say, if you could give him a full offseason, if you could give anybody a full offseason in Pittsburgh, I think that they have the weapons and the offense to make it work, and to give yourself an opportunity. Mason included in that conversation. So we'll see what happens. All right. With that said, guys, I'm heading out of here. Shout out to Rodgers. Shout out to No Coast Golf giving me some things. Look, I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm not going to make excuses. I've done this podcast for 5 years now. We're trucking out 3 years, 4 years, something like that. And we'll be all right. We'll be all right. I appreciate you guys for toughing it through week 1, Nick Belsky-isk. With that said, though, we're heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check out our podcast anywhere you get your audio downloads. Check out that Apple podcast. Check out that Spotify. We are hammering those audio downloads. We bumped up to 3.4, I think, or 4.4, and that's big, guys. You can find all my work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. I'll be back on Monday again, hopefully with some big news, but we'll keep you guys posted. Until then, enjoy a beautiful weekend in the Berg. Peace.